Cultist Simulator is a game about a protagonist's descent and exploration into the deeper nature of their world. It was published by indie developer Weather Factory in May of 2018. The game has 4 DLCs and a follow-up game, The Book of Hours, set to be released sometime in 2022, as well as a tabletop RPG, The Lady Afterwards. The game centers around the core gameplay loop of managing resources, called cards, by means of timed mechanics called verbs. These verbs serve as the main way for the player to interact with the world, as they either enable the player to perform various actions such as exploring, working, or sleeping, or serve to put pressure on the player, such as by consuming money, posing a threat to their health, or even investigating the player for their unsavory actions. The player often, though not always, starts as a mundane individual, a bright young thing, perhaps, maybe a physician, potentially a dancer. Sometimes they are something more, a medium, a priest, someone who's already versed in the deeper workings of things. In all, there are 11 starts to the game, 4 vanilla starts, 3 which follow a standard victory to the game, and 4 DLC starts. The game also has many possible endings, including 8 different loss conditions. There are 4 mundane, or minor, victories, which see the player end the game as something mundane and which can prevent a true victory. There are 5 standard victories, which open the door to a major victory, of which there are 3. Each of the game's DLCs bring their own ending, included in the list above, but the Exile DLC specifically adds 11 possible victories. This brings the total number of endings to 31. The player starts the game with a limited perspective on the world and is tasked with exploring, meeting people, and starting a cult. Discovery is key and runs regularly end in defeat, though each run, assuming you pay attention, will usually give you a little bit of information that you can employ in future runs. The developer responsible for Cultist Simulator, Weather Factory, was founded by Alexis Kennedy, who founded Fail Better Games, along with Lottie Bevan, a former producer at the same studio. Fail Better Games was responsible for the browser game Fallen London, as well as several other games taking place in the same universe, like Sunless Skies and Sunless Sea. This fact is notable because Cultist Simulator inherited much of the feel of the Fallen London universe, the most obvious examples of which are the Lovecraftian aesthetic, the choice of London as a setting, and the particularly uncommon interfaces the games use. Fallen London is almost entirely text-based, while Cultist Simulator is mainly cards and timers. It was released to acceptable reviews, and while it made a modest profit, it was not a smash hit. However, in spite of these lackluster reviews and small consumer base, it still won several awards and was nominated for 2 BAFTAs in 2019. It is perhaps one of the most novel games out there, and its command of atmosphere and artistic design are second to none. London, sometime in the 1920s. Someone has begun a descent. Will they arrive at their destination? Well, that depends, especially on which 1920s we're talking about. The world of Cultist Simulator is easy to miss, even if you're looking for it. Information is buried deep in references to things which the game only hints at. However, as is fitting of a game with such deeply hidden lore, there is a lot to uncover. While it is never expressly stated, Cultist Simulator all but declares that its primary location is London, or, as the game calls it, the capital. While evidence for this is difficult to find, it can be seen in a few places. Should the player receive Secret History's lore, the choice to explore on it is made available to them. If they choose to, they will be given the location of a vault somewhere in the world, with different locations being revealed by different lore. The lowest of these pieces of lore, an occult scrap, reveals a vault somewhere in the capital. A furtive truth will reveal a location in the Shires. A forgotten chronicle reveals a location on the continent. These are in line with London, the surrounding towns and villages, and the European mainland. Somewhere within the Shires can be found a town called Kerisham. It is along the coast, and the waters of the ocean are described as Atlantic Grey, a clear reference to the Atlantic Ocean. On the continent, there is a location, Chateau Raveline, which is claimed to have been owned by the Comte de Raveline, Comte being the French title for Count or Earl. Beyond the continent is the Land Beyond the Forest, which is a literal translation of Transylvania. Within the capital, the weary detective, an agent of the Suppression Bureau, is wearing a helmet very stereotypical of British police officers. And, should the player have the Exile DLC, the only place where they can meet Sulokana Amavasya, a character in the base game and the owner of the Ecdysis Club in the capital, is in the city of London. These all paint a fairly clear picture, which leaves London as the obvious setting of the game. The London imagined by Cultist Simulator is one dominated by eldritch forces and powers both mundane and occult. Existing within the city as a practitioner of the invisible arts is dangerous, and there are those who would seek to stop the protagonist in their goals, whatever those might be. The forces at play in London are not all from beyond our world. Within the capital, the Suppression Bureau, perhaps the most notable of those forces which oppose the protagonist, whose hunters constantly seek to find evidence of those experimenting with the invisible arts, serves as what one might consider the main antagonist of the world of Cultist Simulator. Its investigators are pulled from the ranks of the city's police force, as well as from myriad private investigation firms. In spite of its motto, Alis si licet, tibi non licet, which might be translated as, for some it is permitted, but not for you, there are histories in which its investigators have instead elected to shirk their duties, give in to curiosity, and unravel the way of things. There are also times to come in which one who once served the Bureau has instead reined it in for their own self-advancement, though that is a story for the future. But one is left wondering, what is it that the hunters hunt? To understand that, we must first understand the nature of things. In order to understand the deeper way of things, it is first important to understand the principles. The principles are those things which embody archetypal aspects of existence, and which underpin the invisible arts. Everything has something of a principle in it. People, tools, fleeting experiences. From them, one can derive power, and through their interactions, one can perform occult rituals. These rituals allow for the summoning of creatures from beyond this plane of reality, or the empowerment of those who perform them. There are, depending on how one chooses to count, at least 8 principles, maybe even 9. Each one is associated with a unique aspect, purpose, or function, ranging from death to change to gluttony. Each principle relates to the others in a sort of cycle, wherein one becomes the next and comes out of its predecessor. This transformation of principles is known as subversion, and it starts with heart is the aspect of life, continuation, and progress. It is protection, survival, and the drumbeat and dance which can never be stopped. Those who find themselves compelled by the principle of heart are defined by an upbeat mood and are unwavering in their determination. They are known to move, to dance, to sing. They are not known to stop, and will make no attempts to do so. It is from the survival and life offered by heart that Grail is born. Grail is the principle of pleasure. It is associated with birth, sex, seduction, charisma, the myriad thirsts one might have, and pleasure. Even if not when they first begin the process, those who find themselves under the effects of Grail are persuasive and desirable. They thirst for more than water, and if you should give, they will readily take. It is out of this craving that Moth flies forth. Moth is the principle of chaos, nature, unreason, and whimsy. It is the principle that seeks to know, and as is such, it is curiosity. Those chaotic beings who affiliate with Moth are known for erratic behaviors with plans only they know. They move through this world easily, and sometimes they are even seen doing so. As curiosity will bring one to knowledge, Moth will bring one to Lantern. Lantern is the principle of knowing and knowledge. It is light, it is revelations, most notably, it is cruelty, for mercy, as they say, is only found in shadow. The bright minds who find themselves affiliated with Lantern are known for their strong veneration of the sun and powerful dreams. They are also quite insightful, though as to what they see, that is a bit more difficult to say. It is through the application of Lantern that the artifice of Forge is constructed. Once, it was flint. Now, it is Forge, the principle of fire, creation, and destruction. But most importantly, it's the principle of change. Followers of Forge are known for their problem-solving, skill with machines and mechanisms, and impressive strength. They will work with metal and stone and myriad materials. As to the tools they use, are hands not good enough? As Forge is the manner of creation, change, and destruction, it should only make sense that it would make Edge. Edge is the principle of cunning, violence, pain, and betrayal. Those whose affinity is Edge often have a particularly artistic streak, taking great pleasure in the beauty of their work. Though the canvas they choose may leave their art unsuitable for most audiences. The violence of Edge will invariably give way to winter. Winter is the principle of death, of mourning, of unlife, of beauty, and most importantly, silence. It is the end of all things. It is a solemn principle. The ones who are aligned with winter are sometimes defined by misanthropy, sometimes by mercy in death, but always through silence. They are patient. They will get what they want in time. Much like spring, Part 2 follows winter. Knock is that principle of openings. It is associated with locksmiths, burglars, and oracles, as well as any and all openings, including wounds. People who have become affiliated with Knock are known to be perceptive and dexterous. They often dream of other places and do not always retain a connection with reality. As the principle of openings, Knock is required for every ritual, for it is the only way to open the door and allow for the ritual to work. It does not subvert into anything, but everything else can be subverted into it. It serves in many ways as the center of the subversion cycle, the spoke to the wheel. By far, knock may be the hardest of the principles to understand, depending, that is, on how you count. History, as they say, is just propaganda, constructed as much out of stories and myths as material fact. This is the nature of secret histories, which many consider to be the ninth of the principles. It is the principle of lore, including the lore of the other principles. Secret histories reveal those other possibilities of the world unto us, and in the world of Cultist Simulator, while there is certainly one future, of that we are mostly sure, there is not one history. It is within the lore that one encounters those secrets and deeper truths that the first door is opened and one may enter the Mansus. Beyond our mundane lives and mundane world is a place where we will all eventually go. Some of us may even go there of our own free will. The Mansus, occasionally known as the House of the Sun, is the place beyond the waking world in which the dreaming, the divine, the dead, and the not alive spend the majority of their time. Among its denizens are many different powers. Some of these powers are unique, especially the Hours, those godlike beings whose wills shape our world, and their attendants, the Names. Some, however, such as hints and percussagants, are not as powerful, but can still prove dangerous if angered. The Mansus has been identified by some mortal scholars to have three broad segments: the wood, the bounds, and the Mansus proper. The wood serves as the surrounding boundaries and lowest section of the Mansus. It is the darkest part of the Mansus, and it is where mortals, both dead and dreaming, find themselves when they first arrive. The bounds contain the stone halls of the Mansus, and from which access to higher levels, and even the very summit, can be reached. The summit of the Mansus is where the Hours spend their days. Here, at the top, the light is the brightest, and one can reach immortality and enlightenment. Above the Mansus is a place known as the Glory. It is said to be a place of pure light, and exists in opposition to the Nowhere, which lies beneath the Mansus and is what contains all things dead, both men and Hours. Progression through the Mansus is not an easy or safe process. Not all minds are ready for what they may encounter, so those among us who would choose to move freely in this place must do so carefully, proving our worth with each entry. Progress through the Mansus is limited by a series of barriers, each with its different requirements for passage, and each one with different secrets to uncover. As to what is behind those barriers, you will have to wait and find out, lest your temptations consume you. Patience is, after all, a virtue.